Okay, welcome back everyone, and thanks so much for being prompt. This is wonderful. So I first want to thank our last panel for sharing with us some information on resources for addressing the housing needs of youth aging out of foster care. And this next session is going to focus on some new findings from recent research that focused on one specific resource for these youth, the Family Unification Program. So all morning people keep mentioning FUP. We can't talk about FUP. Well, now we're going to talk about FUP. So Mathematica and Chapin Hall studied FUP as part of a larger project sponsored by HUD. The first part of that project was focused on developing a literature, review of the literature, which Amy shared with you earlier this morning. And the second part of that same study included a structured survey and a series of site visits to communities that administer the FUP program. So that's what I'm going to be focusing on in this presentation. And after sharing the findings with you, then we're going to have a really great opportunity to hear directly from several representatives from two of the communities that we visited. And then we'll conclude with a discussion of implications for policy and practice and research questions for the future. Before I begin, I do want to just quickly acknowledge the great work of several of my colleagues on this project, Rebecca Kleinman, Lisa Klein, Jackie Kauf, Brandon Coffey-Borden, Miriam Rosenau, all from Mathematica, and Amy Dorsky from Chapin Hall. So let me start with just some background on FUP. So FUP is a special purpose voucher under HUD Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program. And so therefore people who are awarded a FUP voucher can use it to go out and obtain and pay for housing in the open market. So FUP was enacted in 1990, and its primary purpose was to provide housing vouchers to families for whom the lack of adequate housing would cause imminent placement of their children in foster care or a delay in their family's reunification. Into the year 2000, Congress then extended eligibility for FUP vouchers to former foster youth who meet specific criteria. Youth are eligible if they are between 18 and 21 years old, left foster care at age 16 or older, and are at risk of homelessness as defined by HUD. So roughly 20,000 or so FUP vouchers are currently in circulation at this point. Until this study, however, very little was known about the extent to which FUP vouchers were going to youth and what challenges or successes communities experience as they serve youth through FUP. So FUP is structured as a partnership between public housing agencies, PHAs, and public child welfare agencies, PCWAs. And the vouchers are awarded competitively to PHAs, and to be considered for an award, the PHA has to show evidence of collaboration with its partner, PCWA, through a memorandum of understanding that specifies how they're going to jointly administer the program. So the program rules require that PCWAs verify whether FUP eligibility criteria has been met. And then for their part, the PHAs are required to determine housing choice voucher eligibility and then issue those vouchers to eligible youth or families. Now, beyond this very basic definition of agency roles, FUP differs for youth versus families in two key ways. First, there's no time limit on vouchers awarded to families as long as they remain eligible under HCV rules and are in need of housing. In contrast, FUP vouchers for youth are limited to 18 months. Second, PCWAs are required through FUP to offer a range of supportive services to youth who lease up with a FUP voucher, such as services to promote basic life skills, education, or employment. Although youth are not required to participate in these services, they do have to be offered under FUP rules. There is no service provision requirement for families, however, only for youth. So to learn about FUP, we designed and fielded a web-based survey of all of the PHAs with FUP vouchers. A total of 249 PHAs were identified by HUD as having FUP vouchers for either families or youth in summer of 2012. And out of that universe, 211 PHAs responded to our survey for an 85% response rate. The survey results indicated that 50% of the PHAs, that is 98 of them, with FUP vouchers had never allocated a FUP voucher to youth. 47% were currently serving youth, and the remaining 3% had allocated FUP vouchers to youth in the past but were not currently doing so at the time of the survey. So we asked each of these three groups a set of questions about FUP for youth. We also wanted to get the perspectives of the agency's PCWA partners. And so to do that, we asked each youth-serving PHA to name their partner PCWA, and 88% of those PCWAs responded to our survey. So we had good response rates. Now, focusing just on the 47% of PHAs with FUP vouchers that said that they are serving youth, agencies reported that many of them, though not all of them, many of the youth issued a voucher are able to obtain housing and to keep it for most of the 18-month voucher term. So, for example, 66% of PHAs reported that more than 3/4 of youth with a FUP voucher are able to obtain a lease. PHAs and PCWAs also reported offering youth a range of supportive services, although the take-up of these services is not known at this point. The great majority of PHAs and PCWAs offered youth some form of assistance in locating housing and obtaining a lease, such as information on vacant rental units, public transportation, low-poverty neighborhoods, and the like. In addition, the majority of PCWAs reported offering services aimed at promoting youth skills for independent living, such as money management, meal preparation, job readiness training, and some educational services. It's also noteworthy that a full 84% of the PCWAs indicated that they provided assistance to youth with their security deposits. One of the most striking findings of the study, of course, was that so few FUP vouchers are going to youth. With 47% of the FUP communities serving youth and with only 29% of vouchers going to youth in those communities, youth end up representing only 14% of the total number of FUP voucher holders. Through the survey, we asked the non-youth serving PHAs for the reasons they do not allocate vouchers to youth. And the most common reason cited was lack of youth referrals. 70% of PHAs not serving youth said that it was because they don't receive referrals for youth from the PCWAs. Yet the survey data suggests that lack of referrals does not reflect a lack of demand for housing supports. For example, only 9% of PHAs said that they don't serve youth because there are too few that are aging out of care, and only 10% said that it's because the housing needs of youth are being met in other ways. For their part, PCWAs who partner with a youth-serving PHA reported that they only refer some of their FUP-eligible youth for a voucher. This suggests that some PCWAs are making judgments about which eligible youth to refer and not refer. So to understand this puzzle and to get a little bit better sense of how FUP works for youth in general, we visited several youth-serving FUP communities. The communities were purposely selected on the basis that they each had reported a relatively large number of referrals, a high lease-up rate, and had been serving youth with FUP vouchers for at least 3 years. We spent several days at each community meeting with staff from their PHAs, from their partner PCWAs, and from community-based organizations that work with the agencies to implement FUP for youth. The communities included Boston, Denver, Fort Lauderdale, and Salt Lake City. So the site visits suggested that determining how to balance the needs of families and youth is a key issue, both during the initial planning and later during operational stages. Because vouchers issued to youth can be reallocated to families after the 18-month period expires, the proportion of vouchers held by youth can actually dwindle over time. So in one community, for example, the initial allotment of FUP vouchers was allocated equally between families and youth, 50-50. But as time went by and the youth's 18-month terms expired, the youth's vouchers were often reissued to families rather than youth, so that by the time we came out to visit, only 7 out of the initial 50 vouchers awarded to youth were still in the hands of youth. And agency staff in this community characterized the current process of deciding whether to refer a family versus a youth as a sometimes agonizing decision, because so few vouchers at this point are actually turning over. Now, 2 of the communities we visited avoided this problem altogether because they had created set-asides for youth. So a set-aside in this case simply means that the community predetermines a percentage of vouchers that will be awarded to youth, and that when a voucher issued to a youth turns over, then it's awarded to another youth rather than a family. Although this strategy seems promising, the survey results showed that less than 1/3 of PHAs have set-asides for youth. Another strategy is to simply refer all eligible youth and families and serve them on a first-come, first-served basis, both initially and as the vouchers turn over. As we saw in the survey data, however, many PCWAs do not refer all of the youth that are eligible to their partner PHAs. Now, the survey and the site visits together suggest that communities may be giving priority for FUP vouchers to families. And although there could be multiple reasons for this kind of prioritization, it's important to note that awarding vouchers to youth does not directly address the key goals of PCWAs, such as permanency, reducing caseloads, and reunifying families. Another reason that PCWAs may give priority to families rather than youth is because FUP does not cover the cost of the required supportive services for youth. So PCWAs often have to work pretty hard to combine funding and assistance from a variety of different resources to cover these services, including CHAFE funding, state dollars, and private foundations. An additional challenge cited by some of the communities was the difficulty in engaging youth in supportive services, particularly if they're offered directly by child welfare agencies. As they transition to adulthood, many youth are eager to disengage from the child welfare system. Communities indicated that one of the best ways to overcome this issue is to partner with youth-serving community-based organizations that already deliver similar types of services. Many of these organizations offer life coaches and other support for disadvantaged youth who are transitioning to adulthood, and those, of course, can include foster youth aging out of care. As suggested in the survey, not all FUP eligible youth are referred by PCWAs in many communities. With the need for youth vouchers outstripping supply, some communities feel compelled to give preference to a subset of eligible youth, either formally or informally. The communities that we visited varied in the type of youth they target for referral to FUP. Some felt that in light of the short time limit, they should give preference to youth who are most likely to succeed at becoming independent in 18 months. To them, that meant youth who are motivated and on track with respect to their education and employment. But the PCWA in another community took the opposite approach. They felt that referrals should be based on the level of need and gave preference to youth who were in the most dire circumstances, including youth who are pregnant or parenting. A third community feared that too few youth would fall into either of those extremes and instead preferred to target youth who are most likely to participate in supportive services. They reasoned that youth who are not yet completely on track, for example, could be helped by FUP if they take advantage of those services. Now, the fourth community that we visited felt all youth should have equal access to FUP on a first-come, first-served basis. Staff argued that without research to indicate which type of youth ultimately would avoid homelessness due to FUP, it's not possible to know which youth should be given preference. So the variation in these approaches suggests that there's no real consensus on whether the main benefit to be expected of FUP should be temporary short-term housing or an effort to move youth towards self-sufficiency. I was on the line. Okay, so the last finding I'd like to touch on is related to the 18-month voucher term for youth. Many of the staff in the sites that we visited agreed that a time limit is important to prevent youth from becoming dependent on assistance. However, similar to the survey respondents, the majority also thought that a longer time limit would better serve youth. They gave several reasons for this. First, they reported that the 18-month term can be a deterrent for some landlords because it doesn't align with standard lease agreements, which are usually 12 months in duration, so that the youth is often left with 6 months there and they can't support themselves. Second, the constant 18-month turnover of vouchers can create an administrative burden for PHAs. And third, staff argued that it's unrealistic to expect self-sufficiency within 18 months, pointing out that it takes longer than that just to earn an associate's degree, for example. Overall, staff suggested that assistance should last between 2 to 5 years, although some advocated instead for a flexible time limit rather than a one-size-fits-all approach, so that youth can exit as they become more independent and self-sufficient. So that concludes my overview of the study's findings, and what I'd like to do now is turn to our panel of representatives from communities that use FUP as housing supports for youth. We're really thrilled that they've been able to join us to be able to offer us their own experiences and insights and perspectives.